From his studios in New York, it's time for Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, where sports meets life. Here's your host, Dan Tortora.
Welcome back here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on WakeUpCallDT.com, your one-stop sports shop, and on MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT. Here inside of today's morning menu, we have Todd Philcox in just a moment. You just heard from Rob Conrad. You'll hear from Jerome Smith. So different eras, different times in the history of Syracuse football, and you will hear each of their opinions and each of their thoughts on this team. Rob Conrad just was up on the show. Todd Philcox coming up in just a second here, like I said, and then Jerome Smith around 10:15 a.m. Eastern Time before we get into a continuation of On the Prowl Jacksonville Jaguars coverage and that leading into UCF and what's coming up for UCF, Mackenzie Milton's injury, DJ Mack being the starter now, and so much more. And the ingredients to success proudly brought to you by Utica Pizza Company, and it's a Utica thing. So with that being said, let's bring him on to the broadcast. We had him on recently here, and it's always good to have former Syracuse players and all of them that have been a part of Wake Up Call. I can't thank you enough. Todd Philcox is somebody that from that first moment he came on to the show, just really appreciated the conversation and everything he brought to it. So it's an honor and a privilege to have him back. Todd, how are we doing today?
Hey, good morning. Doing great.
Now, Todd, obviously you played the quarterback position while you were at Syracuse, so I want to start there. What are your thoughts, your assessment of Eric Dungey and the type of quarterback, the style that he is, and just what he's given to the team in his 4 years there?
Yeah, I've always, as long as I've been able to get him on TV down here in Jacksonville, I've enjoyed watching him. Really just a dynamic player, a guy who is just putting himself out there on every play, and I think sometimes maybe too much to the point where he gets hit too much and has had to miss some time. But really, I've always just been amazed by really the effort that he gives, every single play, and how he extends himself and extends plays and is able to get a little bit of extra out of everything. And it's just been a lot of fun to watch.
When you see Eric Dungey out there and see, how he plays his game and putting his body on the line, he's 6'4", he's put on muscle every year, he likes to run the ball. He flipped over against Boston College, was on his head in the end zone. He tries to hurdle at least one player a season. NFL-wise, do you see it? Can you feel it? What are your thoughts on him as an NFL quarterback, an NFL player?
Yeah, I certainly can see him playing, getting a shot, and being successful with the right team. He's got the size. I think he's got the arm strength. I'm not sure where he, relative to some other guys, where he stands there, but certainly seems to have a strong enough arm to me. And the game experience is something that there's really no substitute for. As a quarterback, you got to be out there getting game time in and learning to react properly with such short, time spans and time span to make those decisions. So he's got that experience. He's proven to really be a winner and be able to lead a team. So I think he's most definitely going to get a chance, and I think given the right situation, he can be successful.
Eric Dungey has not finished a regular season in his entire history at Syracuse until he did it at Boston College this past weekend, going out against Notre Dame and holding on to his side, not coming back into the game at all. The question was, how bad is it? Is he going to play? Can he, is this 4 seasons out of 4 seasons where Dungey is not going to finish the season for Syracuse? Mum is the word. He comes out against Boston College and not only plays but has 6 touchdowns, 3 through the air, 3 on the ground, flipping over, putting his body on the line, this, that, and the other. What can you say about that moment for Eric Dungey, that he finally got to finish a regular season and that he somehow found a way to heal up his body enough or just play through the pain to do what he did? He didn't have a game where he was on the field. I mean, it was one hurdle to be on the field. It was another hurdle to complete a few passes. It was another hurdle to see him run. But then he ends the game with 6 touchdowns, and he's the offensive player of the week in the ACC at the quarterback position to round out the regular season. What are your takeaways from him going out against Notre Dame, coming in against Boston College, and then doing what he did, where the notion was, oh, this is another year where Eric Dungey doesn't get to finish the year?
Yeah, I mean, hard to say from down here. I'm not as plugged into the news, and I'm not even sure. It seemed like his injury was kind of like a back injury. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. He was grabbing his back. It almost looked like it was. It could have been a hip or a back, and then some people were talking about his ribs and whatnot. But there was just that, that hand on the back as he went off the field. But then there was no conversation on how bad it was, and Tommy DeVito's the one that came out and spoke to the media. So the notion was that Dungey was not going to be available.
Yeah, no, I know. I certainly watched that Notre Dame game, and it was hard to tell, but. You get injuries around the lower back and things like that. They're kind of hard to gauge, especially when you're not the doctor looking at him. But I think he's always proven to be a tough player. Injuries with the amount of times he's running the ball and putting his body out there, unfortunately, happen to quarterbacks just because they're not. Used to running the ball and accepting those hits and being able to deal with them. So I do think if he gets to the next level, he'll learn to a degree to change some of those habits and not put himself at risk quite as much. But I think he's in the past proven to be a pretty tough guy. Just unfortunately, he's just taking way too many hits.
What would you say to an NFL team that was looking at him coming up in just a few months?
The biggest factors, I think, for a quarterback to be successful in the NFL, first off, you do want a guy who's got as much experience, game time experience as possible. And then 90% of the game is, between the ears. It's the competitiveness, it's the intelligence, it's the love of the game, and the desire really to be out there. And I think he probably exemplifies, all those things as well as anybody. So those are the kind of factors that I think are going to lead to a guy being successful, being prepared, and being ready to play in the NFL. So those are the aspects that I would certainly think would work to his advantage.
Rex Culpepper, a backup quarterback on the team and a really great guy, and also a Florida guy coming from HB Plant in Tampa. Rex had the statement, he healed like Wolverine. The back spasms, being in the hospital, having back spasms when it comes to Eric Dungey and then being able to play. He shocked a bunch of people, and he shocked, one of the quarterbacks, and probably the majority of the room when he came back and was able to get out there and do what he needed to do. So, this has just been a huge piece of leadership for Syracuse and a huge fight. This is a guy who did not want to end his career at Syracuse without going to a bowl game, and didn't want to end his career at Syracuse without being able to play at the end of the season. And, I mean, he embodies, to me, facing adversity head on and hitting adversity and telling adversity, I'm not going to move. You move. Have you seen a quarterback at Syracuse that mirrors that? When you look back at your time at Syracuse, did you have that dog mentality, so to speak? Is there anything that looks like Eric Dungey, or does he just stand out all on his own when it comes to Syracuse history?
I think there's been a lot of unique players at the quarterback position, and throughout the years since Donnie McPherson before me, and then a lot of great quarterbacks afterwards. The one thing you find really anywhere, in college athletics and professional, once you get that degree, it's the guys who are going to be successful are going to exhibit, a persistence, a willingness to kind of work through things that others may not be willing to go through, whether it's physical difficulties, whether they're, mentally have to deal with things such as, sitting on the bench or potentially dealing with, some losing situations, things like that, where you've just got to force yourself to prevail. And there's many different ways, many different factors you've got to prevail through. But certainly I think Eric has shown that he can prevail through a program that maybe was down a little bit, being the leader of a program where you're trying to bring it back. And then, he's been kind of a workhorse on that offense where he's had to run the ball, throw the ball, pretty much do everything. So he's certainly shown that he can prevail and in his own unique way. And that's certainly an aspect that's going to make him more valuable moving on.
That coming from Todd Philcox here with us this morning on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora. Todd, to look at Dino Babers and what Dino has done in his first 2 seasons, won 4 games in the first, 4 in the second, 8 overall in 2 years. He's won 9 this season in season number 3. Just what you have seen from him, and the second part of that is the hashtag #PayDino is out there. There is that kind of rally cry, also that, cautionary tale to Syracuse that you need to lock this guy up and make sure that he stays here for the long haul. So what do you think about the job that he's done in year number 3 and overall? And then secondly, the whole #PayDino drive that's going on right now, that notion that Syracuse needs to make sure that nobody else snatches him up at this point.
I've loved to watch the program the last few years. Just a great offensive mind, seems like, and has really got some excitement, and they're a fun team to watch. So certainly I would hope they can hold on to him. Would love to be able to see the recruiting pick up. I think we've had some challenges on defense, stopping teams, so I'd like to see that improve greatly. But I think things are going in the right direction. So yeah, I think we need to hold on to Dino. It seems like a fantastic leader. Can't say I've had the opportunity to meet him. Maybe I've said hello once or twice up there, but don't know him well. But certainly everything you see, hear, and read about is nothing but positive. So yeah, I think he'd be a great individual to lead that program for as long as we can hold on to him.
And as the team moves forward into this bowl game, there's a notion that, and I would go with this notion because sources close to the situation that I had spoken with before the BC game, going into that week, I said Syracuse, in my opinion, has, you get 8 or 9 wins, you deserve to be down south. You've earned the right to be down south. I said if they beat BC, there's no doubt in my mind that they're going to be down south, probably in the state of Florida. And then I spoke with those sources that I trust and I believe in, and I know that people hate, when they listen to the show or they read something, they hate when they see sources. They want the information, but they want the people. And as an Italian, I can tell you that you get the information if you cover the source. So I will say sources close to, and I was watching The Godfather last night, so it's just like top of mind. But the sources close to the situation that I trust had said, listen, we win this game, it's Camping World Bowl. And, down at the Camping World Stadium in Orlando, Florida. I agree with that notion. I also agree with Syracuse, West Virginia, because it's ACC Big 12. What do you think about if Syracuse on December 28th, I believe it's at 5:15 p.m. Eastern Time, ends up in Orlando, Florida, down in the state that you're in, against West Virginia and Will Grier in a high-powered offense and obviously an old Big East rival. What are your thoughts on that game, and if you believe that Syracuse has deserved the right to be down south this season?
Well, I certainly believe they've deserved to get to as good a bowl game as possible. They've had a great season and, really played, how they played Clemson, that game. They've shown they can compete with anyone. So I would certainly look forward to a game against West Virginia. That would be pretty entertaining. So if they're coming down to the Camping World Bowl, I'll certainly do my best to get over there here from Jacksonville, and would love to see them playing it.
Yeah, I think it would definitely be a good game. That's the one that I'm sticking with on the prediction side of things, and we'll see how all of that shakes out as we move forward. Jacksonville Jaguars, you're in Jacksonville right now. We're going to hear from my buddy Jason Lucas in just a little bit. He's been on both sides of it, PR inside of an organization, media and journalism on the other side of it. So I always appreciate having Jason on. We're going to have a big conversation on the Jaguars. What are your thoughts on what's going on? They just fired someone that I appreciate and respect tremendously, and that's Nathaniel Hackett. He was their offensive coordinator. He was with the team last year as the offensive coordinator, taking over for Greg Olson 2 years ago as an interim and having success, and going into last season and leading the team to only their third AFC championship berth. Yet this season, they have a ton of injuries. The offensive line has lost 2 left tackles. Everybody on the offensive line has been hurt at some point. TJ Yeldon's played not being 100%. Corey Grant, who's a returner and a running back, is on injured reserve. Marquise Lee is on injured reserve. Niles Paul, Austin Safarian Jenkins are on injured reserve. Leonard Fournette played, one full game or 2 full games this season. He's suspended for the upcoming game for being an idiot. So all of these things have happened to the offense, and Blake Bortles has also held onto the ball a little bit too long. Blake Bortles has had an issue with being sacked, and the receivers have had an issue with getting open. Yet Nathaniel Hackett's the person that's fired for that. So how do you assess the situation, and knowing the laundry list of problems that Nate Hackett was, potentially and allegedly fired over that weren't in his control, what are your thoughts about the current state of Jacksonville?
Well, yeah, you mentioned a lot of it. Boy, it's living down here. It's depressing, really, to see what's happened this year to this team with the expectations coming in. It's just tough to watch. Quite frankly, I think I watched the first half this week, and I went fishing and got in the boat and left because I didn't have any confidence they could really do anything that was noteworthy, worth watching. I'm here seeing these coming across the wires yesterday with Coach Hackett being fired, and then the Bortles benching and things like that. And I guess my viewpoint first was I think it was time to try a different quarterback, and seeing Kessler play earlier this year seems to really have the ability to make good decisions quickly and get rid of the ball. So I would have liked to seen, to be honest with you, Coach Hackett stay and put Kessler in and see how that changes the offense. I think making both the changes at the same time seems a little disadvantageous to Kessler coming in as quarterback, because the tumult and the changes and things are just going to make it harder for him to kind of come in and be successful. So I think if you were planning on making the quarterback change, I think you keep the coordinator. And if you're planning on getting rid of the coordinator, then you might as well just stick with the same quarterback. So I think I don't like the way that was made. The team in itself, sadly, I think we're incredibly immature as a team. The discipline it's obvious they lack. And it's just, you got some character issues, I think, on the team. And it's sad. I think they put the franchise in the hands of too many young guys who really don't know what playing in the NFL is all about. I think the loss of Paul Posluszny, in my viewpoint, he was forced out of the organization. I think that was an incredibly huge mistake, and I think that's why the defense is struggling as much as they are this year. They really lack leadership. They lack a play caller in there who can get everybody on the same page. And I think sadly, this community here, we deserved a much better effort and much better results. And I think the core of the team was there to deliver that. But I think they've just gotten away from really the discipline and the character, and they've turned the team over to too many young guys who really just don't know how to perform week in and week out.
You said something interesting about this team in the sense of Paul Posluszny. You felt that he was forced out. What can you say about that? What made you believe that Paul was not leaving on his own accord?
I mean, that's just my opinion. I haven't heard anything from anybody. But I think the organization had somewhat made it clear that they were moving towards Miles Jack as middle linebacker, and they made every effort to kind of get him on the field as much as possible, even last year when Posluszny was here. And I think that, quite frankly, when you saw teams last year that had success against our defense, they did so by game planning personnel to get Posluszny off the field, and then they were able to pretty much run it, kind of down our throats, at least early in the season. So I just was, it's just my opinion that's kind of was a decision made. I think he was told he wasn't going to be a starter, and at that point, I think his contract was up, and it was just a matter of, when the writing's on the wall as a player, you make a decision based on what what your outlook is, and I think he made a decision to retire based on the fact that he was kind of being shown the door by the organization.
When we look at the, and going back to the injury side of things, Andrew Norwell, starting left guard that they paid a bunch of money to come from Carolina, Brandon Linder, who's been their starting center for a while now, Will Richardson, who was drafted this year in the 4th round, is a backup tackle, Josh Wells, who is the backup to Cam Robinson, and Cam Robinson as well. All of these guys are on IR. 5 offensive linemen on injured reserve, including 3 of the 5 starters. You have Josh Walker at left tackle, who is their 4th left tackle try this season. You have Chris Reed at left guard, who is an undrafted free agent from Minnesota State Mankato in 2015. Tyler Shatley at center, who has been on the team. And then A.J. Cann and Jeremy Parnell are the only starters left on the offensive line. A.J. at right guard, Jeremy at right tackle. This, to me, to state all of that, makes it even stranger that it's all Blake Bortles' fault and that it's all Nathaniel Hackett's fault. So, I mean, you're a quarterback. You know how important the offensive line is. When I'm telling you that 3 out of 5 offensive linemen are out for the season and that they're on their 4th string left tackle with guys that weren't even on the roster at the beginning of the season, just what your takeaways are as a former quarterback.
Yeah, it's certainly been tough and even hard to fathom that they went through a year last year where they were pretty fortunate to be injury free, and then unfortunately this year it's kind of the law of averages has caught up to them. So it's too bad. It certainly has hindered the development of the offense, and even with that, they even this week were able to run the ball very successfully. So I think some guys have stepped in and done a pretty good job. But yeah, they've been challenged, missing players, receiving positions, been challenged by losing Marquise Lee early and all the tight ends. So it's been a kind of a perfect storm on offense of injuries that have hindered them from really being able to perform where they need to.
And before we finish up here with Todd Philcox, former Syracuse quarterback and living down in a business owner in Jacksonville, Florida, so obviously close to what's going on in Jacksonville and watching this Jaguars team fall from grace this season, unfortunately, for the Jaguars and their fans and all of Duval. To look at the Jalen Ramsey factor, Jalen Ramsey regarded as one of the best, to some people, the best corner in the country. Yet Jalen Ramsey, and I can ask you this as well as a former quarterback, he decided to start off the season by painting a massive target on the Jaguars' backs, which showed that he learned a lot from painting a massive target on the Jaguars' backs going into the game against the Patriots. When they went into the AFC divisional round game, and I covered them all the way through, and I was in Pittsburgh was saying, we look forward to the next game against the Patriots. They were overlooking Jacksonville. Jacksonville used that, chip on their shoulder, won the game. Not even 24 hours later, not even 12 hours later, they land in Jacksonville at what was Everbank Field. Now it's TIAA Bank Field. They land at the stadium. Jalen Ramsey takes the mic and says, we're going to the Super Bowl, and we're going to win that BITCH. So he did exactly what what they used to win over the Steelers, he gave the Patriots. The season ends. They don't go to the Super Bowl. They don't win that BITCH. And he starts off the preseason of this season saying, this quarterback's trash, this quarterback's garbage, this quarterback can't do anything, this quarterback's overrated. What do you think of the Jalen Ramsey factor? Because from being inside of the locker room, I saw the writing on the wall of the virus that could easily spread in this locker room. I saw it very early on. Now people, I think, are seeing it on the field. What are your thoughts on the Jalen Ramsey factor? And you kind of alluded to, having this franchise in the hands of some young guys that don't get it. Is he one of those guys?
Definitely. I think the immaturity that he's exhibited, it is very bad for the locker room. I don't think players on a team who are, busting their butt enjoy hearing, anyone in the locker room talking like that. And it just, as a young, guy who really has had some success in this league but really hasn't proven much, to come out and talk like that is just, it's detrimental to the entire team. And that's, was one of those guys who just doesn't really get it. It's a guy who I think all spring didn't show up at team workouts because he was working out on his own. Didn't show up at training camp because he had, he's had a family, but missed a good week plus. And he's played okay, but he's made a lot of errors this year. That's just the immaturity and unfortunately lack of discipline and character that's hurt this team.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they're at a crossroads right now. Tom Coughlin seems like a no-nonsense guy. What are your thoughts on the future of Jalen Ramsey? From the outside looking in, what would you think is the best situation for Jacksonville? Do they trade him and try and get some draft picks or get a wide receiver or another corner or whatever? Or do they keep him, and does Tom Coughlin bring him into the office and go, listen, I can't deal with this anymore? What do you see with Jalen Ramsey? What would be the best option for Jacksonville in your opinion?
Yeah, I would hope that they can just help him along the lines of growing up a little bit and learning to be a professional because he certainly has the talent. So I certainly can be a positive for this organization, but some things, I think have to change. I think this is going to be a season certainly of examples on how not to do it, how not to conduct yourself, how not to have success. So you would hope that, some of the players get it and learn from it, and him being one of them. We certainly have got a core here of players that we can, build around and be successful. But attitudes have got to change.
Absolutely. And it's the great unfortunate that, we're in a situation right now where the writing was on the wall, and when a team loses, it makes it a lot easier, and it makes Jalen Ramsey's voice a lot louder and puts the team in a situation where you start choosing sides, you start dividing up, and I think we saw that on the field. I was in Buffalo for the Jacksonville-Buffalo game, and I was on the side of the end zone when the fight broke out. So, and I don't think that teams that are well-disciplined or community-driven in the sense of, as one mind, one heart, one, just one group, one person, one being, so to speak, when there's not that mental toughness and that oneness, you see these stupid fights break out because the team is frustrated at each other, at themselves, at whatever. And I think that, seeing the fight in Buffalo was and Leonard Fournette's now kicked out of the upcoming game this weekend, and he has only played in 5 games in 12 tries with this game coming up. And so, for me, that just kind of shows the psyche of the team and the lack of mental toughness and the lack of a connection to one another to be so individualistic and be so stupid. Leonard Fournette trying to throw punches with his hands, and he's a running back. So it's just a sad thing that happens, but hopefully it'll turn around. Either way, I will be down in Florida coming up, and Todd, as always, I appreciate the time. And while I'm in Jacksonville, if we can carve out some time there, then maybe we can make something happen. I know we've talked about it before, but I'll be down in sunny Jacksonville, so maybe we can figure out some time to get some FaceTime and sit down and talk. Regardless of how this team plays, we can at least talk about it.
Sounds good. We'd love to do so.
All right, man. Well, listen, I'll talk with you soon. Thank you for your time this morning, and God bless with everything, and I'll just look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, and go Orange. Look forward to seeing you down here in Florida.
All right, take care.
Thank you. Bye.